the Champagne Rugby Podcast. We are back and slightly improved, the opposite of improved, hard to tell, due to the fact that Manaia Stewart joins us today. Manaia, how's it going, big fella?
Yeah, good, thank you. I like to consider myself the Richie Mo'unga of this podcast.
Is that because you once spat at a man in a bar in South Africa?
Yeah, that, and because I'm the only brown person in a team of white guys.
Yeah, that'll do it. What a time to be alive, to be honest. We are at the crunch time of the Rugby World Cup. The All Blacks and the Springboks will be facing each other in the grand final a la 1995, an incredible weekend of semi-final action, and by that I mean they were both a little bit underwhelming, but still the results were good in the end.
I didn't think they were underwhelming. I think that obviously ours was a blowout, as Matt Heath was calling it on the commentary, 44-6.
Yep.
But it filled me with a sense of patriotism watching that game, because this is a team that beat us just last year. This is a team in the All Blacks that had been struggling as far as the All Blacks standards are concerned. And I think I was enjoying it every time they scored again. I was like, yeah, give me more.
Yeah, I 100% agree, actually. I really, myself, liked it. And there was a lot of people after the game being like, oh, this is a bit of a letdown.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's not as exciting. And I actually tweeted this after the game. I'll read this out word for word to show you exactly how I was feeling when the game finished. It said, people who say that the All Blacks game wasn't entertaining can get wrecked. The ABs put 44 points on a team in a semi-final of the World Cup. What more do you want, you steaming piles of shit? Long live the All Blacks! Off to the big dance!
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But it's people that don't watch a lot of rugby that were like, this is boring, this is the problem with rugby, there's all these blowouts. Like this, like you said in that tweet, this is an elimination game. You're playing for the pride of your country. And what do you want? Like you slag the All Blacks off when they lose. You slag them off when they win by 1 or 2 points. Now they thump someone and you're still slagging them off?
Yeah, it's tough. They're like, fire the coach, he's not good enough. And now they've fired the coach. They're like, oh, they're winning by 38 points in a literal semi-final of a Rugby World Cup against the team who, you could be argued is going to be the third or fourth best team in the world. Yep, and people are still like, no, it's just a bit boring. And to them, I say eat shit.
Yeah, get fucked. It's, I don't know. It could have been more as well. There was that try that Richie Mo'unga got a little bit greedy.
Real niggly, that one. It was Will Jordan was the man unmarked right on about 79 minutes. Richie Mo decided to show and go when he really should have just shown shown the pass to an unmarked Will Jordan, who was my triple points fantasy captain, who would have scored 4 tries and really just stacked up those points.
Did you see the interview with him afterwards, Will Jordan?
No.
Like, did you say anything to Richie about that try at the end? And he goes, mate, Richie has put me over for that many unmarked tries. Yeah. I'm not gonna nickel and dime him on a 44-point victory.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But it did cross my mind if that was, say, this weekend in the 79th minute to decide the World Cup, he's throwing it?
He's throwing it.
You think he just saw his name up in lights for a second and was like, I might grab one here?
100%. I don't know if you've ever played in a rugby team that's absolutely blowing another team out, and you haven't scored yet.
Yeah.
It's all you're thinking. You're like, I don't care, because what's going to happen? You're not going to lose the game.
I find myself, it's been a while since I have played rugby, I will say that, but I found myself thinking that the whole time. Anywhere time we got near the line, I was like, I might go over here. I might grab the ball and have a crack.
Yeah, that was me too. I remember in a massive blowout game against Old Boys in Timaru, we were up by about 60 points, and they were like, right, off the back of this line-out, we're running a play for you, Manaia. And I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
Here we go. First try of the season, I'm getting off the undie run. And the other team heard it and cut me in half. Folded me like a lawn chair.
Was the call just, we're going to give it to you, Manaia?
It was that I hadn't touched, and pointed at me.
The point as well.
Which one do you think's Manaia?
Yeah.
and then it was also the way that they congregated around me, were all pointing at me.
Well, it's good. The point does help, because if there's any opposing players who might be hearing impaired, potentially deaf,
that's right.
The visual aid has also let them know who you are. So it's actually quite inclusive.
Very inclusive. It was an inclusive hiding that I got that day. And still had to do the nudie run at the end of the year. So
well, it was a little bit like that in the All Blacks Argentina game, to be honest. It was as if the All Blacks had heard the Argentinian calls, because they just really swamped them. A bit of a messy first 10, 15, and then the All Blacks just open-throated and chopped the lot.
I thought that Argentina quit, and I called it at the time. They had their winger, Boffelli, who kicks. He got cleaned out of a ruck, and he didn't like it. He got his head knocked, and he stayed down. And I was like, that's not the body language of a team that's showing up to win this game. They're very emotional. You could see them. Obviously, they cry whenever the anthem is going, which is great. Fills me with passion as well. Seeing a man cry playing for his country. But I felt like They were overawed. They were like the Black Caps playing Australia in cricket.
Yep.
They just don't have it. Like, they know the other team had the wood over them.
Yeah, and it was only like maybe 12 points to 3.
Yeah.
And there was already some plays where you really thought that they kind of knew the writing was on the wall. And I was like, guys, if you score a try here, it's 10-12. But they were just giving it away, going for the Hail Mary option really early as if they knew what was going to happen. And then what was going to happen, it happened.
Did happen. And this is one of the hardest things about rugby union as well, is the way the game works. There's often a 15-minute period at the end where you know you've lost. There is no way that you can win, but because of the nature of the game, you still have to risk life and limb to play for the next 15 minutes. And to their credit, they did, even into extra time. I think the game went to about the 84th minute.
Yeah, which was insane. The All Blacks got the ball back in like the 82nd and decided to just keep running it up. And I was like, guys, you were in the semi-final. No one's injured. We've only got one yellow card, which we can talk about soon, but that's not going to come back up in the judiciary. Get the ball off. And then they got turned over, and then someone actually got smashed in the second time Argentina got the ball, and it was a pretty big contact. And you're like, what are we doing here, fellas?
Yeah.
Just kick it out. And then Richie Mo'unga got the ball and was like, I've simply had enough of this. This is, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're just trying to, get 50 points over this team in the semi-final.
For what?
Yeah, what if we have a sort of Kane Williamson situation where you break your thumb in a freak accident, or a Tim Southee situation where I think he's also broken his thumb in a freak accident.
Yep.
We don't want anyone to break their thumbs.
That's right, yeah. And people's thumbs were at risk in those last 4 minutes.
Well, they were doing so many thumbs up when they'd score tries.
That's right.
It was aggressive thumbs up that it was, so they might have actually hurt themselves.
Key takeaway, put the thumbs away, boys.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the last game, so in the last 10 minutes, maybe get the thumbs going. But up until then, play it safe.
I thought what was quite impressive was the All Blacks, maybe in the 41st minute, the final play of the first half, scoring a try and then immediately scoring another one at the start of the second half.
It's a real backbreaker, isn't it?
Just the absolute kick right in the cockhole if you are the Argentinians, because you're thinking, we're going to go off here fairly close to halftime. Oh, shit, they got one out. All right, guys, big team talk. We're going to go out. We'll get one. Oh, no, they scored instantly again. It's just, there's no way back from that.
I think that's why they let that second try in, because that was the Aaron Smith off the back of the scrum one. And I think that they were just so tense trying to line up against whatever move the All Blacks were inevitably about to pull out of the hat. And I think it was just a heads-up play from Aaron Smith. That was my highlight of the game as well, that try. It was absolutely incredible, not only because of the individual brilliance from Aaron Smith, but also because of the individual brilliance from me for putting a halftime bet on Aaron Smith to be an anytime try scorer in the second half.
Beautiful option.
Netting me $100.
Well, I happen to love Aaron Smith, and I was actually flying through Christchurch in transit yesterday, and I played a quick visit to the disabled toilet at the Christchurch airport, did a quick prayer for Aaron Smith and for the final. So I think I might actually chuck some money on him to score a try.
That's a huge omen.
I think it just felt good. I was in the toilet. I was thinking about Aaron Smith, took a quick photo. I walked out. I saw a lady who had just seen me walk in. I didn't close the door behind me. So from her perspective, she just saw a man walk into the disabled toilets at Christchurch Airport, look around, close his eyes, open his eyes, take a photo and walk out.
Did you give her the eyebrows on the way out?
I sort of saw her and wondered why she was looking at me like, obviously it's the Aaron Smith disabled toilet. And then once I got on the plane, I was like, she might think that she might have to call the police on me. There could be some real sort of airport tomfoolery going on here.
It was a disabled toilet, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you need the extra room.
She shouldn't be judging you then for what you're doing in there.
She doesn't know what I am capable of or what could be wrong with me.
What I'm incapable of?
Yeah, what I am incapable of. But yeah, it felt good to be in there the week before the big game. I thought he played well. I reckon. I think he's going to play exceptionally in the final. That's my prediction. I think there's a few of those players who we aren't going to see again. This is their last hurrah, and I think all of them. Hopefully they get picked first of all. Hopefully Foster doesn't Ben Smith any of them and just kick them, just commit a crime against humanity to the players who have served us so well. Of course, Ben Smith being left out of the semi-final, which we lost in 2019. And then he came on to play the third and fourth playoff and was man of the match, carved it up, and we were thinking,
spike game.
Would have been good to have him in that semi-final.
Jeez, he would have been handy. We looked at the 2019 semi-final team, and as a preview of this game that we just watched on the weekend, and I suppose it's irrelevant now, but that 2019 team on paper was probably better than the team that we just put out on the field on the weekend. Yeah,
it's definitely a different team. You've got Sevu Reece and George Bridge on the wings, I believe, and you wouldn't have, Sevu Reece would probably be there or thereabouts, but George Bridge seems to have fallen a long way off all the way to a different country now. He's playing for a different currency. But they were sort of real, flash of the plan isn't the right word, but they were the flavour of the month at the time. I think it was in 2019 when they both sort of came onto the scene and appeared to do enough to knock out both of the incumbents.
Yeah, and like you say, I think Sevu Reece, if it weren't for the knee, would probably be in the squad, I think, at least. Sonny Bill was coming off the bench back then.
Sonny Bill.
Sam Cane was coming off the bench back then.
Yeah.
Obviously Kieran Reid was still in the team. But then that English team was much better than the Argentinian team, I think, that we faced on the weekend.
Sam Cane coming off the bench?
Yeah.
Who was starting at open side?
Adi Savia, I believe.
Adi Savia. Well, I think that's been the kind of an issue with, not an issue, it's the wrong word, but something interesting about Adi Savia's career is that you'd have to say he might be in the conversation to be World Player of the Year this year. I mean, he should have been in the conversation last year. I know he wasn't nominated in the end, which is a travesty. And he's like in the conversation for all-time great All Blacks. But the interesting thing about him, you'd almost say there's no position that he is the greatest in a position. He's just this epic utility that can play probably anywhere. You could genuinely chuck him anywhere apart from maybe prop.
Yeah.
Lock would be a stretch. And he could play in the backs, but he's never a master of any position. And I'm not saying that as a diss. I'm not trying to diss you here, Artie. I love you, mate. But yeah.
Sounds like you are.
No. He knows that. I've said this to his face.
He's a tweener. I think 20 years from now, when you tell your kids about how good Adi Savia was, and they'll be like, what position was he? You're like,
He's sort of played everywhere. I mean, he's cemented that number 8 jersey, but that's only kind of because we've got other players. We've got Sam Cane and we've got, Shannon Frizzell at the moment, who's really rocking that number 6 hard, smashing some gentlemen. I love the way he smashes gentlemen. I really do.
He's a gentleman smasher from way back, as Shannon Frizzell. And you know what? We're not going to go there. But he has been excellent as well. He has been... I know we've got like this obsession with these giant number 6s.
Yeah.
That's what we did in 2019, putting Scott Barrett at number 6, which I think you would argue probably didn't work.
Hugh Jarrett.
But we've just had this obsession with a giant bear of a man at number 6, and we haven't had that for the longest time. And we've had this rotating door of different guys, and I think Shannon Frizzell's form this year has really solidified that number 6 jersey for him.
Yeah, we just want another Jerome Kiner. That's it. We're like, guys, we just need it. If we could find another Jerome, maybe everything would sort itself out.
And we've just put the guy who looks most like him in that position.
Yeah, you do have to wonder if there's a little bit of Ian Foster who's sort of playing Guess Who.
There's some positive discrimination going on.
Yeah. And they're sort of flicking up and be like, oh, they're quite similar, just physically anyway.
Yeah, and
if nothing else.
And we've made it work because he's turned into that player that we needed.
Yeah, and he played a lot of minutes on the weekend as well, which is good to see. He sort of had an on again, off again. One of the few players in the quarterfinal against Ireland he was good in parts and missed a bit of tackles here and there. And I think even Ian Foster gave him a bit of a shot across the bow, as they say, in the press conference where someone was like, oh, your loose forwards were good. And he was like, well, 2 of them were. One of them, I might have to have a chat with, but he'll get there. And then I think he came out and played pretty bloody well. And I wouldn't expect many changes for the next game, which again we can get into later. Maybe Scott Barrett, he'll be starting, I would say. But
Barrett and Metallic.
Big old yellow card,
we'll get into it.
Which is not ideal.
No.
But in a semi-final to be, and not even one where you're like, oh, that's debatable. He just was like, I'm going to be a bit of a dick here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a rat bag and put my big old hand out and knock the ball out of your hand.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we are too quick as a game to dish out cards. Mm-hmm. We're so card happy for things that are non-violent offences, where it's like, no other game is so quick to be like, you can't play anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's the first thing that we go to. You get off the field, you're not allowed to play anymore.
It is an interesting threshold for what is and what isn't a yellow card offence. I guess they say cynical play is automatically a yellow card. But what's wrong with a little bit of cynicism? All he's doing is slapping the ball out of his hand. He's just being a bit of a dick on the ground. Penalty, sure. But then you see another guy slap a man in the face, take him high in the air. We had someone taken high in the air, and he was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, no yellow card.
Because of the way he landed, you've gotten away with it.
Does seem to make no sense. He landed in a not way that broke his neck, so no real penalty. If he'd broken his neck, which you couldn't have really had any effect on the outcome of, then you'd be in big trouble now.
The one that really kills me is the one that Aaron Smith got the week before. Yes. The knockdown. In league, that's not a card. That's just a penalty.
Yeah.
Because you are attempting to stop someone from scoring a try.
Yeah.
You should be allowed to do that. And it's a knock-on? Sure, it's a knock-on. The other team now gets an attacking scrum, so that's a big enough penalty for that anyway. To bin someone for that, I think, is absolutely ridiculous, because if you're quick enough to get from a legal position into a position to block the pass, then that was a bad pass.
Yeah, I think the idea of when you're slapping it down, you're making no attempt to take the intercept.
So? You should be
I
able to knock
but
it
I
down.
only think that should be a penalty. I don't think that should be a yellow card. The idea that for some reason everyone's decided, and I don't know who this everyone is.
Nah.
It just seems to be the rule that if you knock it down, and Aaron Smith was going for the intercept.
It's the rugby Illuminati, because my case in point with that thing is, if he had done that with his foot, that's play on.
Yeah.
But for some reason, if you do it with your hand, then it's not. I don't understand.
I mean, we're sort of just relitigating this as well, because obviously Evan Etzebeth, he slapped it down, and Ben O'Keefe was like, well, it went slightly backwards.
Yeah.
But he's still intentionally slapping the ball down.
Yeah,
but just because it went slightly backwards, I mean, if we're against slapping the ball down at all,
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be, I probably disagree with myself there. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. It's something that we need to get out of the game, because nobody, when you're watching that and you don't know why he's been like, why is he not allowed to play the game anymore because he did that? It's always a little bit of an iffy one. Nothing's going to come of that. No further things will come Scott Barrett's way. Very unlucky for the ACC audience, because we have had a bet on from the start of the tournament that either he or Dane Coles would receive a red card.
Yeah.
So unfortunately that didn't escalate further, and we.
Well, there's still one game.
There is still one game.
There's still one game.
You would be a brave referee to issue a red card in a World Cup final.
You would be, but I mean, Ben Smith was yellow carded in the World Cup final in 2015. I think Sonny Bill might have been yellow carded. That could have been a semi-final. Again against Australia.
No.
I think he got a red card against the Lions, I believe. So still a high-profile game, 1 in an 11-year occasion for him to get that red card. So there has been a precedent set, but yeah, you're probably not looking at it. But if there's anyone who's going to do it, it would be Dane or Scud.
Yeah, 100%. And
if there was
if there was a ref to do it, well, to be fair, it's probably Angus Gardner. No, Machu Raynell would be the one to do it. But,
yeah, he does. He's a bit sassy, isn't he?
Yeah. But no, Wanye Barnes this weekend coming. So
yeah, it's exciting to see Wayne, a bit of a redemption arc there with the All Blacks fans. I think we've probably forgiven him for the most part. There's probably still a few people.
If I was Ian Foster, I would send a directive down to my players and be like, first phase of play, I need someone to throw a blatant forward pass and then just eyeball Wanye Barnes.
Well,
and just be like, are you going to call that?
There was a couple of people who said online that there was a blatant forward pass in the Ireland game between Leicester, Whanganuku, and it must have been Rieko Ioane for one of the tries in that game, and Wayne didn't pull it up. He let it slide. And then I think he might have looked up at the camera and given a wink and said, that's for you, New Zealand.
Let's call that square, fellas.
Yeah, and please, can you stop sending death threats to me and my family? I'd really appreciate that. If we could just go about our lives in peace, it would be really nice. The end result means that the All Blacks will go through to the grand final. They're off to the big dance. Argentina humiliated, and they're playing the game, which must be the most punishing game to worry about. I imagine they treat it like a sort of Barbarians tour in the 90s, where they're probably already just sinking beers and eating red meat all week long.
Yeah, 100%. They need to bin that third, fourth playoff.
Yeah.
Who came third in the 2011 World Cup? I couldn't tell you.
I can tell you it was Australia. Australia beat Wales at Eden Park. I was there.
Oh, okay.
That's the only reason I know why.
But I mean, who cares about the third, fourth playoff? The players don't care.
Yeah, I wonder if there is some sort of monetary thing in it to broadcast it. I guess you're getting another game that you can put on the broadcast.
Well, then do it all the way down.
Yeah.
You know, if that's what you're doing, like zip the zipper the whole way down.
Yeah, it's like a sort of high school tournament weekend where you've got a 7 and 8th playoff, you've got the cup final, the shield final, the plate final, the bowl final.
Yeah. Unload the dishwasher on this tournament if that's what you're going to do. But,
yeah. I want to see Georgia playing against Romania for 12th place.
Yeah. Namibia versus Portugal. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, I think Namibia did need more games. That was what their issue was. They were really under the pump. But then the people they'll be playing, it turns out, will be England. The second semi-final on what was that, Monday morning, Sunday morning? I can't even remember because it's all blurred into one. It was, well, unpredictable. Yeah. A lot of people saying that South Africa were going to wipe the floor with England. I thought it was going to be close. I wasn't expecting it to be that close. I won't tell a lie. But England did the thing that South Africa do to other teams, which is just play like stuck in the mud rugby the whole time. It turns out really hard to play against.
Yeah, well, this is what South Africa do, and they drag you out into the deep water and try and drown you. And unfortunately for them, England has sort of built the same team over the last 4 years.
Exactly.
It's what surprised the All Blacks in 2019. It's like, oh shit, this team's as physical as us, and they're willing to go the distance. And I think that for a game that was there no tries scored? was entirely penalties and one drop goal.
Yeah.
It was exciting. People would look at that score, and I think if I hadn't have got up to watch that game, I probably wouldn't have watched the replay because I would be like, that sounds boring.
Yeah, it was
tense.
It wasn't great. It wasn't a great advertisement for rugby for the first 60 minutes. I will say the first half especially. The only thing that was noteworthy was that England were winning. There was one try in the game. I think big RG Snyman said, hey, get out of here, and just charged over all 600 metres of the man. He is an absolute unit. Just had enough, went up the guts and dotted down, which put them in a position to win it. But yeah, I genuinely thought that England were going to win for quite a long period of time.
Yes.
And thought, this has been, what an ambush.
And it had the biggest of big dick plays that we've seen in this Rugby World Cup, I think, was that drop goal from Owen Farrell.
Yeah.
It caught me completely off guard.
Yeah.
No one, he wasn't particularly set up for it. I think
it was miles back.
It was instinctual. He just looked at it. He was just like, yep, bugger it. He was, like you said, 40-something metres back and slotted it, could have kicked it from even further. It went into the stands.
Yeah.
And it was just such a big dick play from him. And it was because the game was so tight, and like you say, it wasn't a great advertisement. If you don't watch rugby, that probably wasn't the game for you. But if you do, I thought it was so tense. It was so back and forth. It was played around the halfway line. For the first half hour, the Springboks have stuck with Manaia Stewart to start at first five. None of their back three kick. And so that meant every time England gave away a penalty, they were pretty safe because they had to just go for the corner, South Africa did. And England muscled up and did a good job of defending that. And when they brought Andre Pollard on, it changed the dimensions of the game because now all of a sudden you've got to be way more careful about where you give up your penalties. And in the end, that was the difference, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty hurtful as well for Manaia Stewart just to get pulled off
30 minutes in.
30 minutes in. It's very early pulling off. You'd like it to last longer normally, but
I'd be happy with getting pulled off within 30 minutes.
30-minute pull-off would suit you all right. I'd rather wait maybe the second half and then I'll get pulled off.
After dinner?
Yeah, you kind of want to have something in your belly and then get pulled off, or at least contribute to the evening and then get pulled off. But you're getting pulled off before you've even really done anything. You've still got all your tricks up your sleeve and you get them pulled off.
Yeah, and I guess if it's Rassie Erasmus doing the pulling off as well, you want a bit more than half an hour to sort of...
Yeah, because he does pull off quite aggressively as well. He pulls off and you don't see it coming. He's just pulling off all of a sudden. You're like, oh... Yeah. And then he's shining a big light at you the whole time as well.
And that's overwhelming too.
Yeah.
Introducing toys into the equation.
Yeah, and you're like, is this a HIA pull-off or a legitimate pull-off? Oh, it's legitimate. It's not. I'm not concussed. Okay, I'm getting pulled off in full consciousness here.
I think that Rassie Erasmus, I don't know if can we give him the credit for all of the pulling off, or is this, what's our man, Jacques Nienaber?
Yeah, well, I think that's
Who's doing
hilarious that Rassie Erasmus isn't the coach. Jacques Nienaber, if you asked 100 people on the street who's the coach of South Africa, a lot of them would say, I have no idea. Yep. And I think the rest of them would say Rassie Erasmus.
Yeah.
I think maybe one person would say the actual coach's name.
Yeah, Jacques Nienaber. Great accent. The other guy that they put up for interviews, Dan Human. Have you seen this guy? He's got go and look up an interview with him. He looks like a, like a Cape Flat, debt wrangler. Like he'd come out and chase you down if you owed someone. He is a terrifying individual. I liked it seemed like, I don't know, again, Rassie, Jacques, whoever is making these decisions, had a great substitution plan where I think they knew this game was going to go deep into like the 60th, 70th minute. And they had massive reserves on the bench that came in. And that last sort of 30, 40 minutes was just as intense as the first because they had these like Argisnemen.
Yeah.
He came off the bench as well. And so they just had all of these. Faf de Klerk came off the bench. They had all these big meatheads that were coming into the game.
Yeah, and they're all coming in the 41st minute, which makes it a real nightmare if you're picking them in your fantasy team. I can say that much because they're only playing about 40, 41 or 2 minutes in an entire game. But it basically changes the opposition for the team, for the English team. They're just sizing them up and they're like, oh, the whole team's changed.
Yeah.
We have to change the whole way we're approaching this game. And you could see it really turning in that second half.
Yeah, 100%. They had to make a few changes of their own. They brought on their second forward pack that they had.
Yeah, it turns out they were absolutely manhandled. I think Alice Genge, which is a very funny name, he came on and was, well, I guess he gave away the final penalty. Joe Marler and the other big bald bloke who looks a bit like a troll, whose name is escaping me right at this moment.
It's Dan Cole.
Yeah, Dan Cole.
Dan Cole. Fake Dan
I wonder
Coles.
if him and Dane Coles have ever had a fist, or at least just gone for a beer and been like, we're basically the same guy.
It's like in rugby 07 and 05 when they didn't have the rights to certain players.
100%.
Yeah, and that's where you get, instead of Dane Coles, you get Dan Cole.
Yeah, and they left the field like heroes, thinking, look, we've done really well here. We've set us all up to carry this home. Oh no, everything's falling apart.
Yeah.
These other clowns who have led on, they look good. The other guys, I will say that. Alice Genge runs a nice tight haircut. He looks like he's just about to go to a nightclub at any moment.
Yep. Kyle Singler is a good-looking prop. Yeah.
He is a good-looking prop. They both have very good hairdos.
Yeah.
I do for the Joe Marler, the big just buzz cut on the sides and a big mohawk.
Yeah. I think RG Snyman's got him done for mohawks, though.
Yeah, they're very just aggressive-looking human beings.
Yeah, on just back on the substitution thing, Sia Khaleesi coming off, he came off like 5 minutes into the second half.
Yeah,
I thought that was bizarre. Yeah.
He's been doing it all day, to quote my dad yelling on the sideline at my under-12s rugby game. But yeah, he's been coming off at about that time and then coaching pretty aggressively from the sideline, but you kind of think he's a talismanic figure in that team.
Yes.
But they just love the swagger of Quagga. They want big Quagga Smith on early days.
When I was a kid, I had a dog whose nose came straight out of its forehead too, just like Quagga Smith.
Yeah, it's quite a look. They all have very unique looks.
Yeah.
Obviously, Faf de Klerk as well. He kind of looks like he's been shrunk down with like one of those rays on Willy Wonka.
Yeah, wee man, hey man.
He is such just shocking. They look like they got a regular rugby team and just dunked them in a barrel of gunge and whatever happened. Like you got the Toxic Avenger, RG Snyman, this giant freak of a man, Eben Smith, who kind of looks like if a 12-year-old wished to be a fully grown man.
Yes, yeah.
He's very young features, but just everything's overgrown about him.
Yeah, he is terrifying.
Peter Steph de Toit, who kind of looks like an actual action man.
Yeah.
He's big, blonde and buff and muscly, but if he was again grown to full life, they're just a very unique-looking team.
They are, and this is something that my missus picked up on. This is the first time she'd watched South Africa in a while. She was just like, look at these dudes. She pointed out Quagga Smith was the first one. She was like, and then Bongi and Bonambi, she was like, look at the state of his arms. Like, they are as wide as, like, the person who's standing next to him's torso. So it's out of control. But should we get into Bongi and Bonambi?
You're sort of saying maybe that there's a bit of steroids going around, some blood doping in the Springboks team?
I think it's just a good, honest South African diet.
Yeah.
They've been on that, their prime rib. They're on the braai every weekend.
Who doesn't love a good braai? I might have one this weekend, actually, to be honest.
Boerewors.
Yeah, well, and you sort of mentioned it there. There's been some accusations come out in the last couple of days. It came out during the game, was caught on the ref's mic. Curry, the flanker for England, he said that he was called a white CUNT on the field, and he said, what do I do if he calls me a white CUNT? Referee Ben O'Keefe said, do nothing, I'll handle it. And it seemed to sort of blow up from there.
Yeah, I think this is... What I loved particularly was the way this was reported on around the world was they put a massive photo of Bongi and Bonambi on there, and it was like accusations of racism in South Africa. And all of the comments on social media were like, what did they say to him?
Yeah.
Like, no.
No,
he said it.
He's saying it to someone else. He's bringing the white man down.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different angles to this that have come out since. One is that there is a word in Afrikaans for side or team that is kant, K-A-N-T, and that he was saying either the ball was on the white side.
Yeah, well, it seems like they have like like when you're calling a side of the field, you might have white and red. So red is the open and white is blind.
Yep.
So he's saying white kant, and yelling it repeatedly. And I have heard some audio where it does sound a little bit like he's saying that.
Yeah, I just kind of have that's certainly, by the way, that is the defense I would mount.
I would definitely say, it's in a different language you don't understand.
Yeah. In fact, if you ever hear me swearing, it's actually not. There's a lot of words in Māori that sound a lot like English swear words.
Yeah, like you useless bastard.
Yeah.
Where did you learn to drive, you absolute piece of shit?
Yeah, that means blindside.
Yeah.
And so that's where the confusion's coming in. It seems like a weird thing for a South African to say. I was saying this to G Lane on the Daily Agenda podcast this morning, available where all good podcasts are sold, was that I don't think I've heard of South Africa. It's not a very South African thing to use the C-bomb. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we seem to use it a lot in New Zealand. I know
Certainly.
Australia is very fond of it. But it does seem like a funny thing to say in the heat of the moment to just constantly be like, this guy is a white CUNT, a white CUNT, yelling it at the...
Yeah.
You're like, you know where you are. You're by the ref. The ref's going to be like, hey, man, would you mind just taking it easy?
Also, if you were going to slag someone off in a team full of predominantly white players, why would that be the thing that you called out?
Yeah.
You're like, fat C? Sure.
Yeah.
Dumb C? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what? Which one of them? Like that?
Or silly Billy, or I'm like, hey, this guy really likes country music. Something I might yell, be like, oh, wagon wheel. Something like
This guy's
this.
a darn fool. So I don't think. Look, I don't know. Me personally, I don't think he said it. I reckon how this plays out is they conduct the investigation, and it comes back one of two ways. One is inconclusive.
Yes.
Or that comes out the day after, and they go, yeah, he said it, and then it all
No one
blows
cares
over.
anymore.
No one cares anymore.
I think it would be interesting if they got the findings for this and they opened it up and they read it and they say, oh, it turns out that the powder found on the Ranfurly Shield was cocaine. They're like, if this is here, then where is our racism results?
Sorry, wrong envelope.
It's a classic wrong envelope switcheroo. Meanwhile, Hawke's Bay is sitting on an absolute bombshell, and they're too forlorn after losing to Taranaki on the weekend in the NPC final.
Now they're in the bloody Waitangi Tribunal. It's just a whole thing.
I still feel like, just to briefly talk about the NPC final that was on the weekend, Taranaki winning against Hawke's Bay in a day game, which you love to see. I still feel like in the wrap-up, the Hawke's Bay team would have got the Ranfurly Shield up and racked some lines off it.
Out of principle, you would hope so.
Just out it. They go, hey, listen, guys, the season hasn't been a total waste. We did win this perfect plate for lines.
Yep.
So that's good.
By the way, we've glued it back together again, so get
Mate,
stuck in.
a bit of hard as nails, you're good to go.
Yep.
I don't know what the big deal was. I'd say the other teams who have broken the shield before and have just glued it together and then passed it on would be countless.
Yeah, 100%. In solidarity, do the All Blacks need to rack up off the William Webb Ellis if they win it?
I think 100%. I've got some more. Here's the audio here where it's available to us now. We'll take a listen and see if you can decipher what is being said, if this is South African gibberish or if this is someone calling someone else a white C-U-N-T. We'll just take some moment.
Advantage, wrong side.
Yeah, pretty impossible to hear anything there. Well, for more inconclusive action, tune into next week's Champagne Rugby Podcast because I couldn't really hear shit.
Inconclusive.
Apparently that is the smoking gun that, well, the opposite of a smoking gun, a cool gun.
It's the Zapruder film.
It's a Zapruder film that says, no, his head just did that.
Yeah.
There's no crime has been committed.
Yeah. I think even if he did say it, World Rugby is going to sweep that under the carpet. The last thing they need to do, he's the only hooker they're carrying at the moment.
Yeah.
The last thing they need to do is ban him from the World Cup final.
And I would like to say, as someone speaking from the perspective of all white CUNTs out there, I'll allow it. I think it's fine. I think that it's fine. You know, we've been perpetrators of a lot of dodgy deals over the years, and I think we can take this one on the chin. I think we're capable. I think we're strong enough. I think Tom Curry is certainly strong enough. He can just suck it up, big fella.
You were saying they all just need to stop whinging about apartheid now, though, because we're a square.
I don't remember saying that. It sounds like that might have been, you might have taken some liberties there. I was fairly oppositing that one.
I don't think ban that guy. Just leave the team. That also gives them an out if you've been their only hooker.
100%. I think this is the thing that we're trying to avoid is any excuse, which is why, in a way, I'm kind of glad that France didn't get through to the final, because especially with Dupont's sort of injury, if he was to stay injured and then, we didn't have Intermac and Dupont, like it would have been different.
Yeah.
And so now we don't have to really worry about that. That story's been wrapped up early. We want to be facing a full strength, obviously Malcolm Mark sort of not in the mix, but close enough South African team, and it's basically a full strength New Zealand team as well. And should we take a quick break and then we'll rip into the final of the Rugby World Cup right after this. And we are back to talk about the big game. Sunday morning, 8 a.m, the All Blacks against South Africa. And I think this is going to go down as one of the greats. It's a bit of a redemption arc for New Zealand. The All Blacks, of course, losing to South Africa in South Africa in 1995, and I reckon we've been holding a bit of a grudge. Susie, the waitress, her name has been bandied about. We've been thinking, we wouldn't mind knocking the Springboks down a peg, and I think this is our time to do it.
There's been a bit of a witch hunt for a French Susie, apparently, who's been making her way across Paris to try and find the All Blacks hotel to derail this one. But yeah, you're right. I think if you had aside from France, if you had tried to pick the best World Cup final before this World Cup started, you would have been like, God, I wish we'd played the South Africans or the Aussies and just absolutely crushed them by 100 points.
Yeah, I think for a World Cup final that has New Zealand in it, I think this is certainly the best option. If we were to have bowed out against that Ireland game, I think a France versus Ireland final would have been the other good option. But of course, I'm always going to say the best option is going to have All Blacks front and centre in it. So I think it's probably worked out for the best. I have noticed a lot of people bandying about the term the greatest rivalry in rugby over the last couple of days, and I feel like there's a few people really trying to get that off the ground to say that this is the greatest. And I do notice these are mostly New Zealand journalists who are throwing this around, the greatest rivalry in rugby. And I was kind of wondering if that is true, if there are better rivalries or stronger rivalries than the Springboks versus the All Blacks.
Surely, I guess we've been so dominant over the Australians for the last 20-odd years that it's probably not them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it us versus South Africa?
I think it probably is in the modern era at the very least. I think there'll probably be some English people who'll be saying, hey, what about us? And we'll say, hey, you've only won one World Cup. Why don't you shut the fuck up forever?
Yeah.
Look at the sleeves. Because I guess that is the other thing that'll be coming out of this weekend is one of the teams, whoever wins on Sunday, will be the first team to win 4 World Cups. They're going to have to sort out how they're going to sew the years on the shirt, because surely they don't just go one big long line of the years. Maybe they go 2 and 2.
I think they'll have to. They're going to have to extend the sleeves a little bit, I think.
Yeah, run a sort of like a Black Caps long sleeve edition.
A little 3/4 action.
Well, they used to run the long sleeve All Blacks jersey. They're really fallen out of fashion. You don't see a Jeff Wilson down the sideline with a long sleeve anymore.
No. So maybe they bring that back. They're going to have to fit another number on there, 2023. How do you think this game's going to go? Because I don't know. I feel like this is going to be, it could go one of two ways. Either they execute their game plan to perfection and it's an absolute dogfight and it's another 8-7 grand final. Or we get a couple of tries in there and mount ridiculous scoreboard pressure against South Africa, which I don't think they handle well.
Yeah, I think that is, I don't think we're going to do what England did, which was fight mud with mud and just throw more shit on the pile. I think we'll try to play some really sort of champagne rugby, which we are prone to do, and try to, like you said, get a little bit out ahead of them, score early, and put that scoreboard pressure on. And I think that if we are able to do that, the world really is our oyster in terms of the All Blacks team. They could really get away with it. And we saw South Africa not respond well to that pressure for most of the game until the last few minutes, where they actually pulled pin and climbed back against England. So if we were able to do that and then hold it off, I really do think that it could be a decent win for the All Blacks. But you're right, if South Africa just pull us down into the mud, get us in the close quarters and make us fight on the dance floor at the nightclub, it could be a real shit fight.
Yeah, 100%. They don't have, as a team, they've got, their wingers are very Rassie, the pair of them are ridiculous. But outside of that, they as a team aren't really. They're not potent try scorers, and I think that was the key to England's success last week. Was when they kicked for the corner, England turned them away every time, and you saw them get fizzed up by that as well. When they turned South Africa away, they celebrated like they just scored themselves.
And that. It drives me. I like to express yourself. I'm all about expressing yourself. Sure. But there is a little bit of me that dies every time I see someone celebrate a knock-on or a not straight line out as if they have just won the World Cup.
Yeah.
I think that it's sneaking in a little bit to the All Blacks game, and I try to just let it slide. But some England are woeful at it. They literally fall down on their knees and pump their fists at literally a knock-on from the opposition.
It's the stone cold knock-on. Unforced error.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The level of exuberance in the celebration for an era which is fairly marginal in terms of net gain.
The not straight one got me as well because it was like you could see them running around but not knowing who to pat on the back.
Yeah,
because they were like, well,
that's
none of
actually
us.
him. I mean, I'm all here for a getting in the opposition's face, a bit of a psychological edge. When they make an error, you give them a pat on the bum and say, "Hey, nice one, fella. Cheers for that."
Yeah.
But the real over the top celebration, you're like, oh, guys, maybe just save some of the energy for the game.
Yeah, we might need a bit of that though, the All Blacks, because that I think, like I said before, is where England made it a dogfight. But yeah, like I said before, if we get a good early try, and his name's Scott McLeod. He was saying that both teams will definitely be concentrating on that 30 minutes because scoreboard pressure changes the dynamic of the game, changes the way you have to play. That's why Owen Farrell was snapping off drop goals. That's why South Africa were really struggling, and some say got bailed out by that penalty in the end there. The difference with us is we've got those players as well. We've got Geordie Barrett who can rifle them from a mile away. Richie Mo'unga is pretty accurate from closer in as well.
Wow.
So.
Wasn't last weekend, but he's got that out of the system.
Yeah, that's right. And he didn't need to,
Exactly.
It's
Pressure
hard,
was off.
It's hard to concentrate, and it's such a low
He needs the pressure. The pressure dials him in.
He feeds off it. So, yeah, I don't know. This one does make me nervous. I do think, and the TAB agrees with me, that we're, quite considerable favourites for this game just because of form. But when you look at our squad versus, particularly the forward packs, they've got a monster forward pack.
Yeah, they do. I think that we are in a better position to handle this than we might have been in 2019 in terms of our forward pack. I think that maybe we went in a bit soft to that game against England where we were manhandled. I think we've got a pretty tough edge. You got the big blokes running around there in the front row, Ethan de Groot bringing a bit of Southland mongrel in there, sort of smashing blokes off the ball, which does get a yellow card from time to time, but I kind of like that to him. Tyrell Lomax, who's like, my leg's cut open in half, but I'm going to get in there. I mean, Dane Coles, he loves to drop an elbow on a man's nose.
Yep.
So I think bringing that hard edge into the team and the experience that a guy like Dane Coles brings in, it just means that we'll be able to combat that a bit more effectively. Having Sam Whitelock probably off the bench, I think is good as well, being able to bring him in the dying stages of the game with just the 153 games now that he'll be playing on the weekend, just to have that to be able to roll in, to add to the toughness of Lurch and Dog Roll. I think that bodes well for us. And then big Shan Frizzell just swinging his dick around is going to be a thing of beauty. I think we're going to combat, as long as we can combat that hard-nosed doggedness that South Africa bring for the start of the game, the first 45, and then the wave of the reserves that will inevitably come on.
Yes.
If we can get to 60 and we're sitting pretty, I think, we can really bust them open.
Yeah, either that or don't get involved in the muck that you were talking about before.
Yeah, I see. Yep.
Just spin it wide and don't bother dealing with them.
I mean, we've got freaks out wide as well. It's I think Mark Talia will start out wide, who's the slipperiest man in rugby union. No one's going to be able to grab him. I think Geordie is about 6'8", so may as well get some good up and unders going as well.
Yeah, I reckon we just paint a target on top of Cheslin Colby's head and just pepper him like the Gaza Strip for the entire night.
Just absolutely bombard him. Yeah, I think
we send out the message now that Cheslin Colby in the north needs to migrate to Cheslin Colby in the south because come Sunday morning, we are bombing the shit out of him.
He is, I think, as long as the message has been sent adequately as well. That's important. You really have to let people know that it is coming, but it is coming.
There's going to be a humanitarian crisis on Cheslin Colby
There really
on
is.
Sunday
I
morning.
think we need to make sure there's plenty of aid heading his way because it's really going to be raining down on him. And is there a more beautiful player to watch just running?
No.
He has the most amazing gait. It's unreal. When he gets going, he glides across the surface of the earth.
It's short legs. I think that helps. It makes it look good. But it's also fearlessness because he must weigh about 60 kilos with a rock in his pocket.
He could play under 85s.
And he tries to bump people and succeeds. Quite often.
I guess he's running full pace.
Yeah.
He doesn't pull the handbrake at all at the moment of impact. He just sprints into, and people are like, Jesus, I wasn't expecting that from this little fella.
Yeah, so he's excellent. But yeah, like I said, watch your head, Cheslin.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of headgear wearers, the wingers for the Springbok team, and I think that's smart because I think it'll be raining down on them all day long, just a relentless attack of guided missiles, and I'm not sure if they have an Iron Dome situation set up that they can use to stop it.
Don't think so. I know they're getting a lot of aid from other countries around the world in the form of players, but not that I've seen. The other thing I would say in that first half hour, if they start money a little bit, which I expect that they will, don't be afraid of using your hands in the ruck a little bit. They got no one out there that can kick the ball. So if you're anywhere outside your own 40 metres, just have a little how you going.
Give it a nudge.
There you go. All they're going to do is kick to the corner.
Yeah, I think it's a good option. Just get your hands in there, be a bit dirty and fringe a little bit. And I think we're not afraid to infringe. I mean, the greatest Sir Richie Mo'unga, he was sort of the king of it, pushing that boundary. Hopefully we just take a leaf out of his book.
Yeah.
And I know this is sort of by the by, but before the final that he played in 2015, he wrote his little notebook that he wrote before every game, apparently. And it has some of the most basic things ever in that notebook, but he always felt the need to write it again and again.
What did he write?
He would write things like, be the first man there, get up, and then always ended, just write GAB, which just stands for Great All Black.
Oh.
And he did feel the need to rewrite it every time. He wrote the same words in, but he liked to rewrite them.
Well, this is
could have just looked at the page from the last game, but no, he rewrote it.
This is much like Jason Hoyt's approach to doing a radio show, whereby he will grab a fresh notepad out of the stationery cupboard every single day, and the only thing that he ever writes on there is the day and date.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, his producer will rip the page out, put that notebook back in the stationery cupboard, and Groundhog Day continues day after day after day. So maybe he got that from Richie Mo'unga.
It does seem like something that, or maybe Richie Mo'unga got it from Jason Hoyt.
That's right.
It does sort of make me think that greatness sort of flows downhill, and it could be something. I might start doing it.
Yeah, great podcaster.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
GP.
GP. Doesn't sound as good as GAB.
Yeah, it's also Greek Prebble. I don't know, it's a bit iffy.
Yeah, it is a bit iffy around here. We share a studio with Radio Hodaki, so you never want to sort of steal someone else's initials.
No.
Here we get constantly getting handed this book back, which has sort of weird allusions to conflicts that are happening in the world in them.
So I guess final prediction then, and we've got a bet to put on, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got a TAB Game Day Good Punt this week, and I think that we've got to back the All Blacks all the way here. I mean, Will Jordan has been scoring tries for fun out there. It would seem insane not to say that he might dot down, and I think that will make him be the top World Cup try scorer in one tournament in history. So we'll chuck a anytime try scorer on him, and also back the All Blacks to really bring it home in 13 plus.
Wow.
Double that up, that's paying $7, put a $100 bonus bet on that. So 700 clams potentially coming towards the way of the listener. So, I mean, I think it's a good bet.
I like it too. You're a bit higher on the score than I am.
Yeah.
Well, I was sort of thinking 1 to 12, but I like the confidence. I like the bravado.
I think it'll be close. I think it'll be really tight, and then maybe there'll be a sort of Bodie Barrett last-minute try a la 2015 where he'll get a kick from some sort of Ben Smith player, run and dot it down, and then someone will kick the ball over with their wrong foot, and that'll actually blow the score out to maybe sort of 14.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
That will have that bet come in. I watched Uncut Gems yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking,
so jittery.
Go big or go home. I got to put my whole livelihood on this. I have some gangsters locked in the doorway while the bet's coming through, and if I don't win, I have no plan B. So I think that's the sort of way to do it.
Well, if it doesn't come in, I will shoot you in the forehead.
Yeah, I mean, if it does come in as well, shoot me in the forehead.
Yeah, I'll still do that.
Just as long as I'm getting shot in the forehead.
Shout out to anyone that hasn't seen that movie, and we've just ruined it for you.
They've had plenty of time, I think, to know that that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, Sunday, 8 a.m, myself and G Lane are commentating that one on iHeartRadio and on Radio Hodaki, which is the easiest way to sync it. There is a bit of a shindig going on at Sweatshop Brew Kitchen, which is a brunch while the game is on, but I think the doors are going to open up a little bit later on. I think the brunch is currently sold out, but the doors will be opening, so anyone can wander in there, and it will be one of those days because it is the benderiest weekend of all time. You can really plan it from Saturday afternoon. I know that we're going to be doing that. There's the Black Ferns playing Wales and Wellington. I think that kicks off at about 4 p.m. And then you've got the Wellington Phoenix playing, I think the Perth Glory, that's maybe 6 p.m. Then the Black Caps play Australia in the Cricket World Cup. That's at 6:30 first ball. Then the Kiwis play the Kangaroos at 10 p.m. And then you really want to coast through the night into the wee small hours. Give yourself maybe a couple of hours just of rest and relaxation before we wake up at 8 a.m. and watch the All Blacks really get it done against the Springboks. And do tune into that coverage where I imagine you'll be in a ragged state of affairs after a huge night. Yeah. I'll be a wreck. The only way for me to survive this is to go hell for leather from the jump, which is not a recipe for great commentary. But
I think it's a recipe for a great moment. I don't think it needs to be the best commentary for you to make it a great moment. If the plane's still circling from the night before, it's still interesting to watch.
Yep, and that'll be what you can watch and listen to on Sunday morning. So win or lose will be on the booze as well. So come join us at Switch Up.
It will be. It'll be one of those days on the Sunday. I remember fond memories of the 2015 final. It was played at a similar time on a similar day, and the Sunday was one of the great days.
Yep.
So hopefully we have something like that to look forward to. And really quickly before we do go, third and fourth playoff, the game that no one cares about. Your predictions for that?
My prediction is I'm not going to watch it.
Yep.
I don't care about it. I've immediately forgotten who's even playing in it. I think Argentina win just because they'll give a shit a little bit more. To come third in the Rugby World Cup, having just won the Football World Cup, that sits pretty well for me to podium. So I think there's more at stake for them. England will be like, if we can't win it, then who gives a shit?
Yeah, I'll just for a little bit of stakes, I'll pick England in that case. I'm not a big fan of England. I'd rather Argentina win it, but I think they'll probably get up. They already beat Argentina fairly convincingly in the pool stages. So a replay of that game, maybe they should just say, hey, let's just use that score.
Yeah.
And not bother. Yeah. Owen Farrell, God, he has to be the most unlikable man in rugby union.
It feels very Owen Farrell for him to not play. In the third, fourth playoff.
He was having a whinge at Ben O'Keefe, and it was great to see good Kiwi man Ben go, hey, what was that, Owen? Oh, okay, march down the field.
Yes.
10 metres. It led me to believe that I think that David Warner and Owen Farrell, very similar characters.
Yeah.
They're almost cut from the same cloth.
Same vibe.
Just real chirpy, grimy people. But I'm sure that in real life they're lovely, but on the field they piss me off. But let's not finish on that sour note. Let's finish on the mighty All Blacks. So one more time, we think 13 plus.
Yeah.
And long live the ABs. And hopefully we'll be back. We'll be back next week either way. And hopefully we'll still just be going strong after 3 or 4 days of celebrations.
World fucking champions.
Tune in next week. And go the All Blacks. We love you. And we can't wait to see you win.